Hi, it's Beth here at Yoga Lattes London. Hi, it's very good to be here and sharing with you a few tips today about safe back bends. So if you're watching this live, let me know. Drop me a comment if you're tuning in live. I'd love to hear from you. And also if you've got any questions about back bends, if there's anything that you find tricky, any particular poses, I've got this time, just a little mini training time today to answer your questions. So if you're watching the replay, please pop some questions or comments in the little comments box below and let me know what you think if you've got any questions, or I'm happy to answer any questions after the video as well. So in terms of safe back bending, a couple of things we want to think about is generally even distribution of that curve through the spine. So if we're doing a back bend on our front, what most of the time, or sometimes you often see in traditional yoga, a lot of the time, is that people will be back bending and doing really big Cobra poses, but there's a lot of tightness going on in certain areas of the body, which I'll explain in a moment. So what happens is the curve, the back bend, goes just directly into the hinge in the lower back. So the lower back gets compressed quite strongly, and then the rest of the vertebrae of the spine aren't quite curving in the same way. So there's a couple of things you can do to ease this. One, I actually teach Cobra quite low, and I'll show in a moment just how I would teach Cobra pose to make it really safe and really effective for your spine as a back bend. But first, I just want to talk about the psoas muscle. I've done a training not so long ago about this, but this major hip flexor muscle that we've got attaches from the lower back, it runs across the pelvis and attaches onto the top of the thigh bone. So what happens is when it's contract, and this often happens when we're stressed, this muscle automatically contracts because it's part of the fight or flight response when we're stressed. When it contracts, it pulls the lower back forward. So if this is a chronically tight muscle for you, and you'll know if it is, if you're doing a lunge, for example, and you feel it's quite a big stretch in the front of the hip, if you're feeling that stretch quite strongly, if this is a hard pose for you to do because of tightness here, it's quite possible that this muscle could be chronically tight. So when I teach a lunge like this, I would encourage my students to tuck the pelvis under to find more length in that psoas muscle, so you're getting deeper into the stretch. And another way you can do this, which is actually one of the best stretches for the psoas muscle that a physio taught me quite a few years ago, is if you use a wall behind you and you bring one knee right up against the wall, and then if that feels like enough of a stretch, then great. If you can bring the other foot onto the floor in front, maybe even lift the hands up onto the thigh or use a chair in front and concentrate on that tucking under the tailbone, you really will stretch out this muscle. And why this is important in back bends is if that muscle is tight, if the psoas muscle is tight, what happens in that back bend is as soon as you're lying on your front, if that's tight, then it will be pulling your lower back into this arched position already. So you're already getting compression here in the lower back. And then if you lift up and you're not tucking under the tailbone and you're not kind of lengthening out that psoas, it's all going to go in your lower back, in that lumbar. And over time, that compression of the vertebra can be really stressful for the back over time. So we want to, as much as we can, evenly distribute this back bend through the whole of the spinal column. So one way of doing that is to slightly push the pubic bone, so that bone at the front of the pelvis, into the floor. So that's the first thing I always cue, because it's a really simple thing to do. And actually, if you're lying on your front and you concentrate on that pushing the pubic bone gently down into the floor, it will bring the pelvis into a slightly more tucked position, which helps to lengthen the lower back. So we're already creating length in the lower back. Another thing I would do with Cobra pose, and really with any back bend, so we're grounding down through the toes, we're engaging the legs, we've got this slight pushing down of the pubic bone, placing the hands alongside the rib cage. And actually, what I would cue is to slightly lift the ribs off the floor. So the lower ribs here, we're going to concentrate on lifting them kind of into the back body. And if you're trying this at home, do let me know if this is working for you. For me, I'm definitely feeling this sense of kind of pushing the ribs, the lower ribs into the back body, pushing the pubic bone down. Already I can feel that that's a really nice sort of elongation of the spine. So we're not just crunching into the lower back, we're creating more of an even curve. And then we're just going to focus on lengthening the thoracic, so lengthening the upper part of the spine. And even maybe drawing the chest forward, but without lifting the lower ribs. So kind of keeping the feeling of pushing the lower ribs into the back body, drawing the ribcage away from the floor, and lengthening, bring the crown of the head forward, toes, grounding, reaching back. And this is quite a lot more work for the arms actually, which is what we want. We want the arms to be doing the work, and not so much sort of as you do with these high cobras, sort of hanging into the lower back, and everything else is disengaged. So we want the muscles to be working, we want the arms to be working, we want the ribcage lifting, the pubic bone grounding, and breathing there. Alright, so coming down, resting the head on the hands, maybe taking the pelvis a little bit side to side, just easing into that lower back. And lying onto your front, you know, if ever you feel like the lower back feels like it's been under a lot of pressure, just concentrate on sending the breath there, you know, breathing into the lower back. So I'll just show one more, I'll show a couple more back bends with this kind of the same principles involved. So just to go over what I was talking about. So we stretch out the psoas, this hip flex at the front, and we do that wall stretch, or you can even do just a regular lunge if that works for you. But giving more length in the front of the hip is going to help your back bends, as I mentioned, by allowing you to tuck the pelvis under a little bit more. So we've got less of a kind of arch going on. We kind of want to avoid this, and we're tucking under the pelvis, we're lengthening those hip flexors. And we're also sort of pushing the ribs into the back body just a tiny bit when we're on our front. And then that can really help to kind of create this strong abdominal support for your back bend as well. So we're engaging these abdominal muscles. We're feeling really nice and long in the spine, and that we're avoiding any kind of hyperextension of the vertebrae. So just a couple more back bends. If you've got any ideas of any back bends that you'd like any help with, feel free to put them in the comments and let me know. Two back bends that I commonly teach, so we'll just have a go at that. Locust pose, arms reaching back, toes grounding down. So this is the variation that I showed in the last post that I did. So check that out. Tuck the tailbone under and really, you know, push that pubic bone down. We've got the legs grounding. We've got that sensation of lifting the ribs away from the floor into the back body. I'm going to reach the fingertips back, and then maybe, I really like this variation of turning the thumbs up to the ceiling. Palms outwards to slide the shoulder blades down away from the ears. Squeeze those shoulder blades together. Maybe lifting the thighs if that feels good. But keep that grounding of the pubic bone down. And breathe. Think length. Always thinking length over lift with back bends. That's a kind of rule that I've always stuck by. And I found it's really helpful just to feel like you're being pulled forward through the crown of the head. And at the same time, the toes, it's almost like you're reaching back to push buttons on a lift with the big toes and lift behind you, you know, really extending back. So finding that extension and then coming into this lift position. Take another breath in and exhale, release down, placing the hands underneath the head, turning the feet out for crocodile pose. Again, just breathing into the lower back. And then we'll do one more back bend. So we'll do bow pose, where you bend the knees. And really with bow, the most important thing is to make sure that the knees stay in line with the hips. So tempting to bring the knees out wide. I really want you to try and keep those legs in line with the hips. Reach back and grab hold of the feet. So if you can't grab hold of the feet, I would recommend coming back and working on your locust and working on your stretches for your hip flexors here, the lunges that I was doing before, to really enable you to get more flexibility in the hip flexors, but also in the front of the quadriceps as well. So actually you can do that just by placing one hand around the top of the foot and just kind of breathing into a stretch there and tucking that tailbone under. So that's a really nice sort of prep to do before bow pose if you'd like to. Otherwise, bringing both feet up, hands around the feet, keeping those knees hip distance apart, Taking a breath in to prepare, and exhale, kick the feet back, but try to keep the pubic bone down as you lift the chest. So I might not be coming up quite so high as if I was doing it and arching into the lower back, but I want to try and keep not only that pubic bone down, but also the thighs down. So quite often, you know, this is taught with the thighs lifting up, which you can do. But again, you know, if it's going straight into the lower back and nowhere else, it's not going to be helpful in the long run. So you always want to be working with distributing the spine, the back bend equally through the spine. Keep breathing. Keep grounding those thighs, keep kicking the feet back. Take another breath in. And exhale, releasing the feet. Take the head to one side, shimmy shake the pelvis. And taking the head to the other side. And when you feel ready, placing hands down, tap the toes, push the hands and knees, lift yourself up with that neutral spine. And there you have it. So I hope that was helpful. If you did enjoy that, let me know. Pop a comment in the comments box. And like I said, if you've got any questions, let me know. Yeah, do feel free to pop something down. So the principles, I'm throwing a lot of instructions at you guys, I know, in this video, but really the most important thing is to just think about honouring that length in the spine. You know, always length over lift. So it's always about how long you can get the body and how, you know, engaging the right muscles to kind of have really safe back bends. Because if you're looking to do this kind of practice in the long term, you know, for many years to come, we want to be practicing safely and with a lot of, you know, careful awareness. So trying to get that even distribution through the spine is really important. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed that, guys. Do let me know if you did, and I will catch you guys all really soon. Take good care. Have a great weekend. Bye.